All right, call to order the regular meeting of the Old Saybrook Planning Commission, Wednesday, March 4th, 7 p.m. We'll start with the roll call. So Mike Fender, present. I see Nick and Doug are absent. Tina Rupp.
Here.
Aaron Tornado.
Here.
Megan Duclis.
Here.
And Dennis Tulamari.
Here.
We'll see Megan for Nick and Dennis for Doug. And we didn't have any housing task force business, so I don't see either of them on, right? Okay. All right. First order of business, if you look at the minutes from our last meeting. We have a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Right there.
Any comments or updates, anybody tonight? But yeah, I didn't have anything for mine. So. We're all good with that. We'll go ahead and take a vote to approve the minutes from the February 4th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Then we did have, yes, we do, this is the correspondence, maybe?
Wherever you want to add it.
Yeah. So we did have one piece of correspondence from Attorney Casella about the Touray subdivision. He sent a letter asking for us to add something to the agenda here about granting them a second 90-day extension to file the Mylars for their land records. This is for the subdivision on Old Post Road, remember? So we given them, I think, one 90-day extension in December. They can give up to 2 here. So I think we need a motion to add this to the agenda and then we could vote on it. So we have a motion to add a discussion on extending the Touray subdivision deadline to file the Mylars for 90 days. We have a motion. Who was the motion?
So motion, I'll second.
Motion second.
Sorry,
Okay.
motion, like.
Any discussion around whether we should extend this or not? The notes here just says that, you know, they're being finalized and approved. The client is working to finalize the bond, but everything can be filed. So they're asking for a second 90 days after this. They don't have any more extensions they can get. So seems fine to me. Anybody else have any concerns? All right. So we'll take we have a motion and a second, so we'll take a vote on if we're going to grant the extension. All in favor, say aye.
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 And no vote, that passes as well. Pass that on to Attorney Casella.
And you made the motion to add it and to extend it. Two motions?
Yeah.
Did we do 2 motions?
We
only did one.
Okay, so now we'll do a motion to approve the extension for the Touray subdivision.
I'll make that motion.
Megan.
Megan make the motion, 2 second. Seconded by Tina. All right, now we'll take a vote. So all in favor of granting the extension, say aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Thank you, sir.
So we added to the agenda and we approved it. So now we can tell Attorney Casella. Good to go. All right, I don't know if we can stall anymore for you guys. That was good. Are you ready? So we have, 2 referrals, on the table. Do you want to discuss them at once? We have to, take separate votes after it, but I'm assuming it's one presentation here.
Yeah, I think they're so kind of.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and introduce them here. So we have 2 referrals here. It's for 91 Sheffield. There's an application for a planned development district designation in the 91 Sheffield Street, map 49, lot 2, Marine Industrial I District, Connecticut River Gateway Zone, Coastal Area Management Zone. And then also an application for a special exception permit at the same property.
It looks like I am saved, Attorney Shanson, you showed up on the screen, perfect.
Summoned and she arrived. All right, you're up.
Thank you and good evening. And I apologize for not being there, but I have a second computer in a second location where I've just done a presentation. It's one of those miserable double scheduled nights. Sorry.
Good, so they were just in time.
Thank you. So I am Attorney Marjorie Shansky. I represent 91 Sheffield LLC. Michael Ott, whom you've met and with whom you've spoken, is our civil engineer. Keith Nielsen should also be in the room. He's also a professional engineer and he's our coastal and marine consultant, who, in addition to taking care of our deep DEEP permitting, provided a site suitability analysis that's part of the record. And he'll present to you later. And then Abigail Adams and or Barbara Constable, our landscape architects are here to talk about their robust landscaping plan for the development and what has gone into the study of this property for several years now. We were last with you on this development in October of 2021 when the commission provided a positive referral to the zoning commission on the application to amend the Old Saybrook zoning regulations to add a planned development district into the tools that are available for developers. If you are not familiar with planned development districts, they are a flexible post-Euclidean zoning tool. It's a flexible tool that is appropriate and desirable when you have either a parcel with special needs or a parcel of certain scale, and it can be a great tool, to reuse that word, to implement objectives of the plan of conservation and development. So we were there in 2021, and in December of 2023, the Zoning Commission actually adopted the Planned Development District, which is now Section 36 of the Old Saybrook zoning regulations. And a Planned Development District is a two-phased exercise, which is why you have two things on your agenda this evening. The first is to present the master plan of development, which results in the underlying property zoning district being changed from its existing district into a planned development district. The subject parcel in our case is 91 Sheffield Street. It is currently zoned marine industrial. So the effect of the mapping exercise and the master plan is to seek approval on the legislative side of the zoning commission's activities to land the planned development on that parcel. And then the implementation of that plan comes through the detailed site plan, which is the other part of the agenda this evening, and also includes the coastal site plan because we are in the coastal zone. So that is the mechanism that brings us here, and the brief history of what brings us here. The property is almost a 10-acre parcel. It depends really on what the tide is doing as to whether it achieves that metric or not. And almost 5 acres of it are tidal wetlands. You will see when I hand this over to Mike Ott that we are respecting all of the setbacks relating to the tidal setback, the gateway conservation setback, and so literally half or a bit more of the property is consumed by the regulatory and environmental setbacks that protect the values and functions of the tidal wetland, but also then result in a limited building envelope for the development. There's also one isolated wetland, freshwater wetland on the parcel. We have a wetland approval relating to the house closest to it. And we have this master plan, which I think it would may be appropriate for me to turn this over to Mike Ott right now. Although I guess I want to say one more thing. I hope that you have, because it was in the application package, this narrative that I provided. It's called Petition to Old Saybrook Zoning Commission Proposed Map Amendment. And it is a narrative that describes what I've said about the history of the parcel and the proposed planned development district. But on page 2 of it, there's a map, which is a segment of the zoning map of the town of Old Saybrook. And the beauty of that map is that it's demonstrative of one element of plan of conservation and development and comprehensive plan consistency of this development, which is that this one parcel of MI is surrounded by residential zoning. And it is further surrounded, although there's a business zone adjacent, there are residential uses at the closest margin of that business zone. So this is an entirely consistent use element. Now, following the map on my submission is a description of the specific aspects of the plan of conservation and development with which we have demonstrable consistency. And I think to further sort of immerse ourselves in the property, I think I'll hand this over to Mike Ott at this point, and then I can come back and talk about plan consistency, and we can entertain the questions of the commission as we go along. And then, of course, Mr. Nielsen, and then Ms. Adams. So thank you.
Does anyone know AS Land PC1? Are you with the team for 91 Sheffield? You're a guest. You have your hand raised.
That should be Abigail Adams.
That is her.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's her.
Perfect, thanks.
All right,
Okay.
you're muted.
You're muted, Abigail,
Yeah.
or you were muted.
She's not muted.
Oh. We're not getting any audio coming through.
Yeah.
Check your volume.
We should.
Well, I guess I could start, well, we should be able to work that out. She's actually gonna share her screen to show those things. Hopefully she can hear us, hopefully. So just for the record, I'm Mike Ott, I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers in Madison. And Mark, I don't think Attorney Shansky could see, Keith Nielsen is here, is also a licensed professional engineer. And Mr. and Mrs. Picard are here also. They are the applicant and owners of the parcel. I don't think Attorney Shansky maybe couldn't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Abigail Adams is the landscape architect for the project. So it looks like you guys have your plans with you. If you the easy thing might be to do is to go, if you can, I don't know, Abigail, if you can hear me. If you're
dropped off.
she's gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Technical difficulty.
Hopefully she'll be able to share, but you guys have.
Yeah.
So if you go to the existing conditions plan, if you think it's like C101 maybe, should be very early in the plan set. Maybe actually, that's a good one, that aerial, that ortho. I'll give it to plan for that gives you, real life picture of the site. So it should be like the, I don't know, third sheet in or something like that. So that, I'm sure you're all familiar with the site, but that orange and yellow lines are the parcel boundary. And so the Riverside Cemetery is to the west and south, and the parcel is, as you can see, it's oddly shaped. And there's about a 700-foot long driveway that comes from Sheffield Street into the site that provides access to the 4 buildings that are currently on the site. 3 of them are still standing, one has collapsed. I don't know if you can see that in the photo, but there's the 4th collapsed building is closest to the tidal wetlands, closest to the top of the sheet. So you can see the cove, you can see the tidal wetlands complex. As Attorney Shansky said, about half of the parcel is actually tidal wetlands, regulated tidal wetlands. And then Saltus Drive is to the east, that residential neighborhood, as you can see. And to the west also is the town's senior housing development. I think it's 55 Sheffield Street.
Sorry to jump in. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness. So sorry about that. Apologies. Mike, do you need me to share my screen?
That'd be great.
Plan.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. That'd be great. Thanks.
You are welcome. Okay, just let me know where you need me to go.
Can you scroll to the existing conditions plan? Abigail, one of the first sheets. Should be right after that one, I think.
Okay.
So kind of hard to see on the screen, but the reason I wanted you to look at the existing conditions plan is so just to kind of just really quickly, so about half of the parcel's tidal wetlands. There's this very long driveway. There's 4 existing buildings. One is quite literally collapsed. It's flat on the ground, just a bunch of debris at this point. It's been like that for a number of years. The isolated inland wetland pocket that Attorney Shansky mentioned is to the right, that small circular area. And as Attorney Shansky said, we've been before the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, and we have an approval for it from them. There are several regulatory lines and or setbacks on the site, starting at the tidal wetland boundary. The tidal wetland boundary is the line with the dark triangles on it. If you guys stop me if while I'm talking, if you have a question or you can, or if you can't see something I'm referring to. But so starting at the tidal wetland boundary, the first tidal wetlands are regulated, of course, by the Connecticut DEP. So we're not proposing any activity within tidal wetlands. The first setback as we head landward from the tidal wetland boundary is that in the town zoning regulations, there is a 50-foot special, I believe I'm saying the name correctly, special tidal wetland setback. And that basically says you can't do anything within it. No filling, no grading, no hard construction. The next setback back, another 50 feet landward, is the 100-foot gateway riparian buffer area zone limit. And that comes from the gateway regulations section of the town's zoning regulations. And that prohibits development within it also, with the exception of being allowed, there's a couple exceptions, but for this project, being allowed to have a 5-foot wide path through that riparian buffer area to access a dock. Or for other reasons. In this case, it'll be the public access walkway, which I'll explain in a second, in addition to a private dock. So those are the regulatory setbacks that Attorney Shansky mentioned. And in addition, you'll see if you look closely, there's a 100-foot upland review area around the wetland also. That's also on that sheet. So you can see that from the unusual shape of the parcel, the presence of tidal wetlands and the tidal creek that's on the project, and those regulatory setbacks, it really limits the development area. In addition, there's one more, it's not a setback, but there's one more regulatory program that comes into play here. And that's that there is a special flood hazard area zone on the property. And hopefully you can see that also, it should be labeled. So there's an AE 11, AE elevation 11, special flood hazard area zone on the parcel also. There's not a prohibition that you can't develop within that, but there are certain regulations that you have to comply with. So that's the existing site. In general, and if you have any questions, please stop me. And then if you flip to the next page, I think is the overall site plan for the development. And I'm sorry, one more. That's the site.
All right, there we go.
So, yeah, Abigail has that up on the screen in a second. So that plan shows the proposal for the redevelopment of this site. And so the driveway, that 700-ish foot long driveway from Sheffield Street will be improved, the existing one will be removed. It'll be a new access driveway, it's 18 feet wide. It has a turnaround, a circular turnaround at the end. It has an entry median in it with decorative stone masonry, walls and stonework. There are, as you can see, there are 4 single-family residential homes proposed. They're labeled as units in this particular case because it's a planned development district, so there are units 1 through 4. Each one, public utilities will be brought in from Sheffield Street underground, water, gas, power, communications, telephone, cable TV. So all the utility services, the mains and services will be underground. The houses, of course, are served by septic systems. Those septic systems have been reviewed and approved by the Connecticut River Area Health District already. Swimming pool is shown. You should be able to see in-ground swimming pools for 3 of the 4 units. Yeah. Abigail's pointing to them, I think, with her cursor. And there's a extensive stormwater management system proposed to collect and treat the stormwater runoff from the driveway. There's a high point as you come in from Sheffield Street, the driveway rises and then goes back down again. So it required 2 separate systems, one at the very beginning of Sheffield Street and one at the end, just north of the turnaround. So all stormwater runoff from the proposed new driveway, access driveway, is collected and treated prior to being introduced into a subsurface infiltration system that goes into the ground. The soils on this site are sands and gravels. We've done a lot of test pits out here. The groundwater table is relatively deep. So no, with regard to the septic systems, none of the septic systems are within 100 feet of the inland wetland or within 100 feet of the tidal wetlands. They're all outside that zone to be protective of the resources on the site that we need to protect. So the 2 homes closest to the tidal wetlands at the north end of the sheet, units 3 and 4, the roof water from unit 4, because it is close to the tidal wetland, it goes into small subsurface infiltration systems. There's one on the left of the house and one on the right of the house. The roof water from unit 3 will be discharged directly to the ground, and because the soils are so sandy, the roof water should infiltrate into the soils. And that's the same thing for units 1 and 2, but as you can see, they are very far from any of the resources on the site. So the actual activity, there is activity within 50 feet and within 100 feet. The activities are the walkway on the right-hand side, on the east side of the parcel that Abigail is tracing. That's allowed under the gateway section of the zoning regs and allowed under the special tidal wetland setback section because it's not hard construction. There's no grading, there's no filling, no cutting, and no hard construction. It will just be a wood chip surfaced 5-foot wide path. So there's that activity within those 2 zones. There is a private dock, as you can see, proposed on the plan that gets permitted. Keith Nielsen will talk about that a little bit, but that gets permitted through the Connecticut DEP. The other activity, well, while we're on the walk, well, I'll go to back to the walkway in a second. The other activity within those regulatory setbacks, 50 and 100 feet, is an extensive vegetation management plan and new landscape plan that Abigail will talk about. And I saw that you guys have her landscape plans with you, and you have the report from Bartlett tree experts that took a look at all the existing trees on the site. We located all the trees 6 inches in diameter plus, and Bartlett tree experts did, an inspection of all those trees and created that report that you have, and Abigail will talk about that. So, the access pathway and the vegetation management and replanting plan. Oh, and the demolition of the buildings, of the existing buildings, including the one that fell down, getting rid of all the debris, are the activities within those regulatory setbacks that I mentioned, the 50 and the 100 zones. In addition, to go back to the walkway, so in addition to the petition to amend the zoning map and the site plan application that's been submitted, that Attorney Shansky explained, we also had to submit a municipal coastal site plan review application by virtue of the site's location on the coast and being within the coastal boundary. So the walkway on the east side, is proposed to provide public access and a viewing area at the end of it, at the limit of the tidal wetlands, and the ability to look out over North Cove. Since we created these plans and submitted the application, there's been some discussion between the town and the applicant about expanding that walkway system to the west. And Abigail just brought up one of her plans that shows that expansion in yellow. So it would create a walkway on the west side of the cul-de-sac along the southerly property line, as you can see, all the way to the common boundary with the town senior housing project. And the idea, without getting into great detail, my understanding is the idea is to make a walkway connection all the way through the senior housing project property and all the way to the estuary center. If you know where that is in the center of town. There's also a little bit of a expansion of the walkway that we showed initially by the dock to the west, a shorter expansion. So that expansion to the west, it will be located within an easement. The plan right now is to have it be located within an easement in favor of the town of Old Saybrook, and the town of Old Saybrook would ultimately construct that portion, that expansion to the west of the walkway system. There's also, I don't know if you can see it, but that western expansion includes a little spur that there it is, that goes to the north, just a short spur to another seating and viewing area. So there would be two separate viewing areas on the site along the tidal islands. So I think, unless you have any questions, I think that's a pretty good.
So the access is viewing them while you don't actually, there's no way to like put in a canoe, or I know at one point I think that was talked about. That it was like use the water, not just look at the water.
Yeah, so viewing, Attorney Shansky can expand on this if she has to, but under the Coastal Management Act, and so can Keith Innocent, who's gonna talk next, so this will go right into him. A viewing area under the Coastal Management Act provides public access. Not all public access under the coastal management is actually being able to get into the water. There are viewing, here's a great example, actually. You may not have seen this, but the Whispering Cove Road in town off of I forget the name of the road, but it runs behind the Ford Ragged Rock, maybe it runs behind the Ford dealership.
Yeah.
If you go down that road and you take a right on the Whispering Cove and you drive up Whispering Cove and it turns to the left, on your right, you've got great views of the tidal wetlands complex of Ragged Rock Creek and out to the river. There is a public access walkway there. When that subdivision came through the town, a walkway just like this was proposed. There's a walkway from Whispering Cove Road that goes down towards the water, and then it goes along the road. So, or along the tidal wetlands. So no access to the land. You can't put a boat in there, or canoe or kayak, but you can walk along it, or you can do it. And that was done under the Coastal Management Act, that was done in 2000 and I actually was the consulting town engineer here when it was done. It was before 2004. So, it's been, it's been there a long time. So that's an example. There are others in town like that too. There's one up by the castle, actually similarly. It walks along the top of the bluff kind of, but there's no access to the water. So that, unless you have any questions for me, that might be a good segue for Mr. Nielsen.
I just wanted to ask, so this public access walkway terminates at this dock and private walkway? Like that right now?
Yeah, and it's gonna be that little expansion to the west, that little yellow expansion that I think she's trying, yeah, she's showing the cursor, that's gonna be there
So
also.
that, so this part will all be private use?
Right, the dock itself, yeah.
Right, and so I'm just trying to visualize how is this separation of public and private at that area planned or foreseen?
Yeah, I think Keith and Abigail and Attorney Chansky will be able to talk about that, but this new idea, I think, is gonna help with that. Rather than, as that's a great question, because when you look at that plan, the public access walkway goes straight to a private dock. But that is this plan will change that. So it'll turn off to the west, to the left, before it gets to the dock, and the benches, the actual viewing area will be whatever that distance is. It looks to me like it's at least 100 feet, I would guess, to the west. So
I think we can just have on that.
So
And so
yeah,
this, so the private dock is all for use of these residents. That's the.
Keith, I'll let Keith talk about that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe is that it, unless you have any questions for me?
Yeah, it's probably related to that, like, is this, I see like median and gates at the entryway, so if I'm a public user on Sheffield Street, how am I gonna know that it's allowed to walk down this road, there is public access there? So how's this gonna be made sure that it's friendly and welcoming to the public?
There's a
So
sign.
there's signage, yeah,
But
But
when
if
it
there's a
says
gate-
gate, is it actually a gated community?
Is there gonna be like a private road sign next to the public access that
Yeah,
is really confusing?
Yeah, so it's actually just like the one at Whisper Cove Road, you notice that there's public access signage, there's actually a detail in the sign.
Yeah, so
Signage in the plan set, public access signage is required, so the public. These public access points end up on Deep's website, coastal access points, public coastal access, but they end up on Deep's website. So out at the street, as you notice, there's a public access sign, and then there's another one at the cul-de-sac. Right where the path goes off. So the public, there's no parking, just like Whisper Cove Road, there's no parking for the public would have to walk in to get to it, and when the new plan, when the town does the western portion that we talked about, they'll, I'm sure, be another sign on the other side of the cul-de-sac that will identify that entrance to that walkway, that portion of the walkway system.
I'm just saying, if there's a sign at the entrance that says public access, then next to it is a no parking, private drive, residents only. It's just not a very welcoming experience. That's what I'm trying to understand, what is it actually gonna look like?
Yeah.
If I'm standing on the sidewalk in Sheffield, looking at this road down
It'll-
there, am I gonna know this is a
Yeah,
public road I can walk down and there's your public amenities back
it's
there?
the same thing at Whisper Cove Road and the same thing at. I think it's Heartland Drive or Heartlands Drive up by the castle. At Heartlands, there's a little parking area. At Whisper Cove Road, there's literally just a sign. You would probably be a little hesitant at first because you're walking right between the houses, right along the property, the common boundary between houses to go down to the walkway that walks along the water. Very, similar to this. You're walking on private property.
Yeah, no, I'm just worried about just the road itself, like
Yeah.
is the road gonna be marked in such a way that it looks like it's a private road? Or is it going to look like it's a public road that's open for people who wanna go for a walk?
It would look, it's not gonna be signed, keep out and all that, but and then the entry median, as you can see, is well into the site rather than out at Sheffield Street, but nothing would prevent the public from walking. In fact, there's a little
I mean, it
bit.
just says gates, like are there gonna be?
Yeah,
Do
they're
I
just,
just walk around the gate?
there's, if you study, actually Abigail can talk about it, but there's, when she comes on, but, she's designed that entryway for the public to be able to walk right through. There's a little walkway, actually a walkway there. You can't see it on my plans because of the scale, but she'll be able to talk about it.
Yes, but the intention is to have gates. They, right, Mike, they would automatically, as cars drive in, they automatically open.
For the
But
residents.
for the residents, correct, but there will be a pedestrian access around that has no gate. You go through a little wall, there's a walkway, and it'll be signed, but the intent is to have an automatic gate at that entrance.
So,
I think, I mean, one of our goals is to promote public access and.
Yeah.
Putting a gate that some people might not feel comfortable, like, I'm worried that we're calling it public access, but we're hiding it at the end of a private driveway. And I love the idea of the new path that goes towards the senior center.
yeah,
That can eventually connect through the plaza, maybe even like Main Street, and it could become a whole, town trail where you start at Main Street and walk all the way to the what, that could be really a great
Yeah.
way to do it,
yeah,
if that's something you're talking about versus what's on the plans.
right. So we're not, I hear what you're saying. We're not really trying to hide it. We're actually putting up the required signage, just like at Whisper Cove Road, but I see your point.
Yeah, if a sign says public access, but there's a gate right in front of me.
Yeah, yeah.
What am I gonna believe,
So I think maybe,
Yeah.
maybe Attorney Shansky, when we get to back to Attorney Shansky and to Abigail, maybe we can expand on that a little bit more.
There's a lot more to present here.
Yeah, it might be, is this a good time for Mr. Nielsen?
Yes, Megan or Dennis, do you guys have any questions now, or do you wanna do the rest of the presentation?
I'll hold my questions for now.
Thank you.
Yep, very, very good so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Keith Nielsen. When we were beginning to do work on this project, we had a fairly limited scope. Ours is to provide DEP, Corps of Engineers, and town permitting if necessary for the dock facilities associated with it. But the reason that I wanted to prepare these exhibits, and I hope you can distinguish the colors adequately here.
Just say for people, it's C-102 if you have the digital one in front of you.
So what happened was this property has a long standing history of really underutilized dramatic. It was 10 acres of land, and it's got about 5 acres of tidal wetlands, as Ms. Shansky pointed out. It's got 50-foot zoning buffer in yellow. It's got the second buffer from the gateway regulations. And between the natural features and the protective buffers, you end up with a limited site. This area of green is all that really can be developed here outside of the regulatory and the actual resource. And the point of my original presentation and assessment of the land was based on how do we make a marine industrial site work here? And the problem is that with all these resource setbacks and the very limited remaining land that can be developed, you really can't put a marine industrial use on this site. And I think the fact that this site has existed like this for the last 50 or 60 years, since zoning was established for a marine industrial use, and has never had that kind of a use on the site, is a testament to the fact that this really was not an appropriate zoning classification. The what's left is a fairly small parcel, and even the shape of the land that could be developed makes it very difficult to make something productive, because the infrastructure has to come in along this narrow stem that provides access to the property, and it leaves most of the developable land right here in this small upper T end. So when we were asked to participate in the project and so on, we were also asked, what is the best method of making a docking facility for this? And we have another feature over here at the far northeast corner. That's the limited shoreline. In here is a narrow and very shallow creek, and out here is the Bay of North Cove. And it's really the only logical access point for a dock, and it is a limited dock. The proposal that we put together was for a fixed wood piling timber pier that would span over the battle wetland vegetation right up in this area, and a path back to whatever was developed back here would be a low impact path, wood chips and so on, that are not going to create a large landscaping effort. And so that's pretty much where we were coming from on this. And so the process has been long going on for a long time, and it's has not really been successfully concluded yet because of these complications. I would point out that there's a progressive regulatory sequence to the development of this land. When this was originally zoned, we didn't have things like the Clean Water Act or the Tidal Wetlands Act, or even some of the Coastal Management Act provisions that are currently involved today. And so the Coastal Management Act 1980 determined that waterfront properties like this should be water dependent uses, and that would lead to some synchronization with the zoning determination. But again, with all of these buffers and setbacks and so on, permitting almost becomes impossible for this. If you can imagine a marine commercial use like a boatyard, which is usually between 5 and 10 acres, a reasonable boatyard in here would take up most of the site. And under current permitting standards, that's not going to happen. And so what we were trying to look at was, how do we make something that is desirable and useful with minimum environmental resource impacts, consistent with the plan of conservation and development for the town, which is to emphasize on minimal structure and have them suitably designed for the environmental considerations. And so the pier that we designed and was part of the original plan, and is shown on one of your plan views there, is an elevated wood pier supported with driven wood piles that can all be built from land. The floating dock system would be built off-site and towed to the site, and the same with the ramp. And they could be set with either steel pipe piles or driven wood piles, or even auger type piles that basically get screwed into the bottom sediments and will adequately hold the floating dock in place. And that way you can get small draft boats in here, and each house can be afforded the accommodations for one slip at this dock. It's a shared facility, so it minimizes the impact to both the tidal wetlands and to the harbor bottom in that area. And but dredging is not an option that can be really considered here effectively, because it's going to require between 7,000 and 10,000 cubic yards of dredging. The equipment that has to come in for that type of operation, you probably saw when Patriot dredged out the main anchorage in the harbor in North Cove. And that is a laborious process of digging, putting the excavated material into small barges, lightering it out to a large barge, offloading it into the large barge, and when that's filled, take it to the open water relocation area, which is out in Long Island Sound down near New Haven. And a project like this could cost $200 to $300 per cubic yard, which makes the 5,000 to 10,000 cubic yards a very expensive and not cost-effective proposition. The use of small boats is a practical limitation of the site. So I just wanted to show you the substantial obstacles that we have seen in the development of this site and why we went the way we did. This is the proposed dock facility over here. This is the fixed wood pier, long ramp, floating dock sections out in the water, so that they're in 1 to 2 feet of water. They would not touch the bottom, and the bottom impacts of the floating dock would be minimized. The fixed pier is a high pier, 6 feet or so above ground, so that, and it's more or less in a north-south direction. It's north-northeast by south-southwest, and so sunlight will come in to the bottom features of the marsh from the morning from the east side, afternoon from the west side, and shading impacts will be substantially reduced with that alignment. So that is the basis of the waterfront development part of the plan that we prepared, and really our emphasis on making a good and viable use of the property with minimal environmental impact and something that could be an appreciable amenity for the project. And that's how we got there. I'd be happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the background history and sort of seeing it in color there, like how much of this property is impacted is. Okay, it's good to see that. It's hard, you can see it on here, but I haven't like we told it on there. It was nice.
It's pretty graphic when you look at it in that perspective.
It's a hard to use piece of land for anything.
Very difficult. And so the thing is that Mr. Picard, through Mike and the various development efforts, has put together a good plan. This makes good use of the land. It's consistent with the other properties and the other zones right around the site. It's not going to stand out as something, significantly different. There are public access amenities to it, and it's not going to be disturbing to any of the existing residential uses. So it fits. If any questions come up, I'd be happy to answer.
Appreciate it, Keith. Thank you. Ready for landscape now?
I think I'm up.
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. For the record, my name is Abigail Adams. I am a registered landscape architect and owner of A2 Land Consulting out of New Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm going to just be presenting the proposed landscape improvements for the project. And first of all, I'd just like to start by noting that, as mentioned earlier, the property has been reviewed and studied by several consultants over the past several years. In 2024, the applicant hired Bartlett tree experts to prepare a report that assessed 292 trees over 6-inch diameter in this larger area of the site. This back half, adjacent to the tidal wetlands, the gateway, review area, and within the wetland upland review area. This report was a guiding document in determining the trees that should be removed for health and safety reasons and which trees we should try to retain and work around as part of the development, especially in the vicinity of the wetland area. Our plan set has a summary of Bartlett's findings, again, speaking directly with this back portion of the property. The trees that are noted in green, and I know this is a very, very busy plan, lots of colors going on, but we've got a legend and hopefully it's easy for everybody to understand and we don't need to get too detailed into it. But I just want to note, trees in green were deemed in good condition per Bartlett. Trees in yellow were fair condition. Red trees are in poor condition, and the black trees, again in this front portion, were already considered to be dead. And the X's that are noted throughout our plan are trees that we have proposed to remove. A black X over a tree indicates trees to be removed as recommended by Bartlett. So you can see that there's several that were just not in good condition, and they recommended that these trees should be removed from a health and safety standpoint. A red X indicates trees to be removed due to construction, and that ties into not only this portion of the property, but also the southern portion of the property as we look at units 1 and 2 development and the new access drive for the development. A purple X are trees to be removed because they are invasive. This includes Norway maples, trees of heaven, and black locust. And blue X's are trees to be removed per the applicant. Within the front portion of the property, trees will be removed to make way for the proposed development and the new material that is proposed for replacement, which I'll review shortly. In addition to the tree removal and general cleanup, invasive plants have taken over a large portion of the property. We have lots of different hatching that you can see on this plan, and then we get into our enlargements. These areas are areas of invasive material based on Davison Environmental's mapping and invasive species and associated report. On-site invasive species include species such as mugwort, Phragmites, Japanese honeysuckle, Asiatic bittersweet, burning bush, multiflora rose, among others. So it's sort of the typical invasives that we see on a lot of properties here in the New England area. We have noted invasive plant removal notes in the notes and details section of our plan set. However, a thorough plan will be developed and implemented by a licensed applicator when we need to use certain herbicides. In order to offset, let me just switch to another, give me 1 second. Let me move through these plans. Lots of tree removal here. All right, I'm going to start with this is our overall landscape plan here. In order to offset the trees and plants that are being removed, the invasive species and whatnot, we have an extensive landscaping plan that focuses on species native to Connecticut and relatively salt tolerant due to the nature of the site. As guides, we used the Green Old Saybrook Community Tree and Shrub Planting Guide, as well as Yukon's Connecticut Coastal Planting Guide with pollinator and wildlife value dated from March 2021. Plantings inside the Gateway Conservation Zone, which is this area as we had shown on Mr. Ott's plans. These are all our setbacks in the Gateway area here. We include the planting of an overall understory would be the New England coastal salt tolerant grass mix. Wherever we're removing invasives, we are going to be replanting. Wherever there's disturbed sites, we are going to be replanting. So the base material will be this coastal salt tolerant grass mix. As you can see, we are then coming in and we are planting pockets of shrubs, evergreen trees of all different sizes, and both evergreen and deciduous, flowering, etc. These are going to include species such as red maples, eastern red cedars, serviceberry, American holly, chokeberry, witch hazel, winterberry. We have a number of plants going in here. Similar native material is also proposed in the area just upland of the wetland. As you can see, we have a pretty extensive buffer plan going in here. We have the wall for unit number 4, and then all of this wetlands upland area will be enhanced as part of this project. It is a significant amount of replanting in this area, as well as replanting and planting along the access path for the public and for the private residents to move along to their dock. Buffer and screen plantings adjacent to the neighboring parcels include green giant and northern bayberry. So we have green giants running along the part of the cemetery buffer right there. And then arborvitae's also in this corner here, adjacent to those residential uses right next door. And then some northern bayberry as we get closer to the tidal wetlands in this area. Then as we move farther to the western end, we open up this denser hedge planting that we have buffering the cemetery here to become more open with a mix of some green giants in there, but American hollies, serviceberry, witch hazel, and some native sumac in this general vicinity. I'm going to get myself down to the front of the property here. Okay. So we've got a little bit of an enlargement in this area. Give me one moment. Trying not to jostle the screen too much. Right here we have Sheffield, and this is our main access drive into the site. And what we're proposing to do is flank the driveway with 2 large sycamore trees with a beautiful underplanting of massings of hydrangea, ornamental grasses, some juniper, and some Kodiak orange bush honeysuckle to create a really nice for interest streetscape right here along Sheffield and create an inviting space for people to see the sign and walk into the site as we were discussing earlier. As I shift over here, we start to, excuse me, get rid of that, give myself a little bit more room here. As we move into the site, we're creating a buffer of skip laurel along both of the property lines with some honeysuckle in front for a little bit of variety, some dogwoods in this area, and to focus on a little bit this main entrance where we are proposing 3 beautiful masonry pillars here. The driveway gates would be on either side here. This is going to open up automatically as people enter. This opens automatically as people are exiting, creating a little bit of a boulevard feel in this area here. We're proposing a brick or paver pedestrian path here. So there's the signage, they'll see the gates, but right away we have a nice pedestrian walkway where you move through past this small low wall, that low stone wall we have here, and you move right into the site, and then you can continue walking into the site towards the public access path. Once we move into the site, we start changing to an arborvitae hedge along both of the property lines here. And then for the streetscape, we are proposing to have the green pillar pin oaks as the street trees flanking down the entire drive. Make sure I'm moving my plans in the right direction. Whoops, sorry. Try not to do that too much. So as you can see, we've got street trees, our buffer plantings of the green giant arborvitaes. Here's unit 1. Keep moving into the site. Unit number 2. And here's our sign for the access path to the water at our cul-de-sac. And we start to move around to that location. And then we get back into the overall planting plans that we were just looking at. And I had discussed earlier about the plantings and the native plantings that we had in the gateway zone and the larger back portion of the property. One moment while I get back to my overall planting plan. Whoops. Sorry, a lot of jostling here, but just want to make sure I'm on the right plan. Just in closing, overall, we are proposing 70 new deciduous trees, 30 ornamental trees, over 400 evergreen trees, and over 900 shrubs as part of this enhanced planting plan. These will all create habitat and food sources for wildlife and pollinators on the site. The intent of the planting design is to enhance the site both environmentally and aesthetically for those who live there and those who enjoy the public access path that's being offered. I know that there's a lot of information and I don't want to get into too much minutia, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have related to the landscaping plan and improvements.
No, there's a lot in here. That's what I heard you say it's all gonna be for like, you use the town's native, planting guide, which is great to hear. Just kind of curious that once I guess the planning is done, like how small it is gonna be at the beginning, like how many years before it sort of would be mature, you'd think?
Yeah, that's always a tough question when we go from initial planting size because things are a little small. We are proposing that the trees are going to be 2 to 2.5 inch caliper at install, which is pretty typical for most developments for trees, especially when we have 70 going in. Evergreens we're proposing at anywhere from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 feet high, ornamental trees 14 feet. I mean, putting the trees in at 2.5 inch caliper, they usually have a better chance of establishing themselves in the first few years are going to grow pretty quickly. These trees are typically growing, 1 to 2 feet a year, depending on how things go. So yes, it's going to take a little while for those to mature, but putting them in at the 2.5 inch caliper is a good way to go in a situation like this.
How do you remove the invasive species? Like, do you just dig it all out? Do you treat it?
So, yeah, that's a good question. It really depends on the species that we're talking about. So, because there's so many different species here, we do have in the notes and details sheet, let's see on the end, we have a site-specific invasive plant removal. We have notes that are related to each of the different types of species. And there are some that definitely need to be removed by herbicides, and a licensed contractor who deals with herbicides will prepare the final plan for that. Some can be removed manually.
Yeah. So I remember they were removing all the Phragmites, joint effort with the state of Connecticut throughout Old Saybrook. I mean, they did a pretty good job. I don't know exactly what they were using, but
yes, I believe that's all Habitat, and I believe that's the company that the applicant would be speaking with about this particular project as well.
okay.
My name is Michael Gard.
Yeah.
So one of the things through a lot of information in a short period of time. I'll answer first because I don't believe Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Rock got to that, but this has been going on for numbers of years, right? So there was variations of this plantings, but we have worked with the people, All Habitat, who is currently contracted to do the Phragmite remediation for the town and for the condos. We have offered, if this gets approved, that we would participate in doing all of that along our edge as well. So at the cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars, which we'll get to another point, which will really enhance the viewing part of this. But when you go through all these things, everything's so technical. So I thought maybe what I would do is kind of try to put it in what I call layman's words, my words. But the history of this property is it was used years ago before zoning was established in a marine fashion. Sail company was here, okay? Grommets and sails. And so when zoning came in the 70s, it was there. And so they carved it out as marine industrial not because it was planned that way, because it unfortunately became that way. And it kind of remained and just didn't change. And, all along it went residential, but this one remained. Over the years, as it happened, another company that was in the marine business, but what I want to emphasize is never used it in a water dependent fashion. No company ever did. So the actual water dependency of this never existed to our knowledge. That's important because, it's just, as Mr. Nielsen said, it's just not even a feasible practicality to turn this into any kind of an economical, commercial, water dependent use. And then the rest of the uses are very limited. In this process, from when my wife and I purchased this property, initially we had purchased it and we've owned it for so long with the intent to try to do something commercial with the property. But as Mr. Nielsen said to you before, as time passes on, everything changes, right? So I don't know exactly, but I think there's like 7 commissions that weigh in on this. Everyone with a sort of a different agenda. So, you've got, so we have you guys, you have Gateway, which we haven't gotten into, that has their own plans. You have the Department of Environmental Protection, Connecticut DEP. We also had some federal government people come in and have us do studies archaeologically. We have DEP, there's quite a bit of estuary activity here, eagles and other birds. So we are dealing with the state in terms of preserving those environments for that to be enhanced. Abigail went through, what is multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars of landscaping. But the goal, what we started is, everything was really tried to be well planned. We didn't want to just go in and hack anything. So we hired, professionals, and they surveyed every tree on this property over a certain size. And the goal was, in simple terms, the stuff that's flourishing and adds, let's keep it, right, maturity, let's trim, let's do whatever. Once the diseases, let's get away. Those that are invasive, don't add, but then let's replace it with native, like in kind. I can tell you, as someone who's been involved with a lot of these things, you would be surprised how quickly all this stuff grows, because we've done stuff on Elm Street where we planted these trees, and 2 years later they're like, overtaking, going up into the wires, stuff at 250 Middlesex. Recently, not even a year and a half ago, we replanted a bunch of stuff at 0 Middlesex. I mean, this looks like a bigger forest there than before. So I would say to you that the amount of plant material that's going in here is huge. Our task will be to continue to try to maintain, to keep the good stuff, and keep the bad stuff out. All right, that's where I'm gonna, use the other wording. We also, as part of this process that wasn't mentioned, is we also had to go for an application to the Department of Inland and Wetlands. That's the one piece inside. Initially, when we purchased the property, it was the opinion of a variety of wetland scientists, and actually even in the end, that this inland wetland pocket wasn't of significant ecological value. So it was suggested to us that we perhaps relocate this to another area of the property and recreate an inland wetland as opposed to a tidal wetland. and they would flourish more. So we spend lots of money and lots of activities and lots of times trying to do that. And one of the previous times we've been here, we had a plan that had a more exuberant offering. But as it turns out, the inland wetland people did not feel that it was advantageous to, while a lot of professionals thought they should, and not getting into the detail, create a new wetland. They wanted to preserve the one that's there, even in its low functioning capacity. Through an efforts of soil scientists, biologists, landscape architects, and what have you, they agreed, and what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of history before we got here. They kind of agreed that this tree stays, this one goes, get rid of this, plant this, and so a lot of this that you see here, it's not us, okay? It was a collective effort by professionals as well as our professionals, with all differing opinions. So that's kind of where we got to here. In terms of public access, I think, which is my understanding, again, this is just my understanding, that this is pedestrian access that we're trying to create, not necessarily, it's not a public park. So it's a 10-acre site that unfortunately, because of tidal wetlands, gateway set wetlands, inland wetlands, all kinds of setbacks, there's about roughly 3 upland acres of land, right? And we're trying to put together a PDD, a planned development, small condensed residential development. And as part of that, we're trying to enhance it with pedestrian, people that can walk and appreciate the property. So again, with the town's offices for selectmen and others, as well as the Harbor Commission, who weighs in here as well. We still also have to go to the Shellfish Commission and others, okay? Is that those folks said, what we really would think would be great is if we could get you guys to maybe extend the public walkway another 50 feet to the west, which we did. I don't know if it's scaled to that, but that's what we had agreed with the Harbor Commission. Add some additional seating, because that's really where the view is most robust. As it turns out, actually using the water in this area is limited, so, and it is a private property and they are private residents. So, the challenge that I have is that I have to be able to make this, as they put it, a public-private partnership, right? So we have private people that will be owning these homes that need to reside there, with some level of privacy, but yet we are offering, because of its proximity to the town and to ways for pedestrians to come and enjoy all the other scenery. So we've agreed to donate to the town, or provide an easement to the town, fairly extensive easement, 5 foot wide, that would go from the corner of the cemetery, which we've already gone through, to the town's property. The town has not yet permitted or what have you, but it was mentioned before. They want to see if they can connect this to the estuary, because they feel it's going to get a lot more efforts. That will be their job, not mine, but ours to get there is providing this. And they also thought maybe for some of the seniors that don't want to walk 700 feet to North Cove, provide something for them to visualize closer near the condo. So we've really followed all those descriptions. In terms of the gates, now you said they're not inviting, I think it really determines how you look at it, because one of the challenges that has been brought to our attention by the neighbor body, okay, to the right, who is, hasn't really been in favor of much of what's going on here, right? They find that, their road is also private. People go down there, nosy, can't turn around driving their grass, what have you. Are concerned with their own privacies and noises, so they're very concerned about how crazy the public would get. So we are working delicately to do this. Those gates are not like crash, keep out. They're barrier arms, so to say, people. And the gates will open automatically. They're 3 foot high, they're open. It's really to say, this is not designed for you to meander in with your car and have a way. If you like to use this, you can walk from the town hall and use the sidewalks. You can walk maybe from the estuary. Perhaps you can park in the school parking lot like they do for it down the street. You had mentioned the kayaks. We had thought that there was a lot of complications with that. One of it was the lack of really being able to use this, angling, getting out, low water. And the town said to us, we already have a kayak launch, we don't need a second. So that should, hopefully I can answer that to you. as well.
When earlier proposal, I think I saw that on there.
Yeah, no, that's why I said, they're throwing all this at you, so I'm trying to pick this up and trying to get to the, to the point, so. My goal is, besides trying to eventually, hopefully economically make this work and turn it a beautiful. I mean, just an awesome place, because right now it's really shabby, disgusting place, and, so we're talking about, getting rid of all the commercial buildings that are literally just been abused and unfortunately violated. And then, replanting this with the help of all these, these professionals into something that's vibrant and in keeping with that lower Connecticut River Valley, lose the Phragmites, which was cool. We also donated, I don't know if you know, but we gave to the land trust about 11 acres of land on Elm Street. And they are using that money to, over there at the Hartford Hospital projects, to get rid of the Phragmites. So we've contributed there as well. We think that's gonna be fantastic. And, absent of it being, Hammonasset State Park, I think a lot of people that walk, and there's quite a few, will be able to go down there. It will be inviting, that walkway, and it will be marked clearly. They're not coming in there 2 a.m, but, and they'll be able to go there, and we're talking about putting inviting seating there and look at the birds, and then if they wanna go to the, down to the pedestrian area, they can do that. We think it's really, it's never perfect for everyone, right? Everybody has their own ideas, we have to go to another commission that I won't get into, but they, their ideas is like, it's legal that you can have a 5-foot walkway, but they're really not. They like everything not to be touched, so their agenda is different than perhaps your agenda, than different than the zoning agenda, than maybe the shellfish agenda, than maybe the, Harbor Commission's agenda. So this is what I'm trying to say to you here is this has been a huge balancing act, So I hope that you can appreciate that we really, this is, obviously biased, right? We think it's a fantastic plan. We've invested a tremendous amount of time, over 5 years of our time, in excess of millions of dollars to this point, and we hope it's gonna be, we think it's gonna be a great benefit to the town, from a residential standpoint, as well as from a pedestrian access and enjoyment of the nature standpoint. Hopefully that answers it, and anything else technical, I'll let them answer it. I just tried to kind of get it to,
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
thank you.
Did you have anything more, Abigail, or were you? Ready about to be more? Yeah.
I think I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just clarify on the hardscaping? So there's the gate and you go, I think you said it was gonna be like a paved area to the right of the gates. for
Yes.
pedestrian Access, and then you go to the actual street, right? There's no sidewalk, you're just walking along the residential street.
Right,
That's correct.
that's good, fine.
It's okay,
Yeah.
it's a driveway, and then when you get to the end of the cul-de-sac, there's
Yeah,
another.
not really cul-de-sac, but yeah.
Or-
There is another chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
Correct, and that's where you take the path back up.
John, I think a lot of the class is how you make it look and how inviting it is.
Yeah,
You
so
see that.
So what we're,
Yeah.
what we were saying is we want to try to make that, that. Again, it's, so she was saying that like these sycamore trees are beautiful. They have them in Paris and these parks, so we're gonna try to flank either side of that. It's a narrow road and, frankly, we're also gonna try to work with the cemetery, see if I can help them augment some of their lack of planting to kind of even address kind of approaching it, but they're gonna have 2 beautiful sycamore trees, underlying plantings, and then, stone wall, 3 feet high, it's decorative, and then, a big open walkway that'll have, pavers in, so it's invites the people. We just don't want them driving their cars in, and that's really and then we decided to make it a little bit, just at the very end, because we don't have the space, let's make it a little boulevardy, so, because it's so tight, you come in on one side, because we have a little more space at the end to get wider, so you come in, the gate will open and it's automatic, and it's not like security, and then as you drive out the right, it opens up and it goes there, but the walkway is is, you know, I think it's 5 feet or what have you, and it's pavered and it's inviting and about the sign, and, you know, so it will have public, you know, but it's pedestrian, you know, I just wanted to be.
No, I mean, that pedestrian, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
if you have a pedestrian access, then right next to it is a private driveway, like, nobody. allowed.
Yeah, no, but it's
more about, yeah,
it is like a public, it's a private
exactly, no,
development, but it, you know, because it's not a town road, you know, it's.
That's tricky situation.
it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I was down there today and those buildings are an eyesore and, you know, as a realtor and designer, like those, you know, your houses are beautiful and they're, you know, lifestyle estates. And, I'm just trying to figure out like this, like you said, this public-private kind of mashup, you know, with these very exclusive homes. You know, like how would the residents be accessing? Are they accessing on the same path to go to the dock? Like, are they gonna?
They are,
Yes.
yeah, they have.
Like that?
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah.
So the dock is going to, at the actual dock itself, because of the private boats on there, we are, you know, we're not allowing the public just to happen on their docks. So there'll be a little, you know, gate to block that, but yes, that's how they're accessing it too. So it's, you know, it's a community thing, but it's a balance, you know, and, you know, the homes there, I mean, there's one house that's a good size, but, you know, the homes there are not huge in footprint, because we had to, you know, kind of get them into this, so there's, you know, there's 3,000 overall square footage, 3,400, you know, 30-something hundred, there's one that's, the big one would be 5,000, but, you know, there, 3 of the 4 houses are boxes that kind of, well, one is narrow, 30 feet wide, okay, so it's not very deep. The first one, the next 2 up, one is on the right is only 50 by 50. And the one on the left is about the same size, number 3. So yes, they're gonna be finished nice, but you know, you're also talking about properties that are, you know, property that's extremely expensive, right? That, you know, to buy, to develop, so, you know, it's not like you can put in 500, 1,500 square foot houses, you know, actually that was offered, but it's not, so. You know, we worked diligently with the town to even get to this PDD concept, which you guys probably know, and, that, you know, to adopt this language to take, you know, maybe in this instance or other instances of the town, where you have, you know, properties that are unique, and perhaps you can put in something that's planned, small, dense, but yet owns an enormous amount of open space. So think about this, I'm sorry, I think I called you the wrong name, but it's 10 acres overall. A large part of this, 2/3 of it is technically open space, right? It's either tidal or it's planted or it's vegetated, so it's not like it's, you know, it's not like densely overdone, you know, it really is, I mean, they're clustered to a certain area within the property, primarily because of all the setbacks, but, you know, it's a lifestyle for everyone. Obviously, those who can afford the houses, it's a lifestyle, but, you know, everyone can use, anyone and everyone can access the property.
Yeah, I would just wanna make sure it's, you know, meaningful for the public and not symbolic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing to like deed something as open space and say it's public, but then it's how it's presented.
Okay, I think this is a challenge. You know, when the coastal land management act went in, right, I mean, I think. You know, there are certain properties that would lend itself better to full public access or not, but I mean, it's a balance, I mean, you know, and, you know, this is. You know, it's 10 acres, as I said, it's about 3, with the setbacks, you only have roughly about 3 developable acres, which isn't big. Which isn't really big, so, you know, there's only so much that you can offer without being able to do anything on it, because again, anytime you're doing these houses, you have to have certain setbacks from this line, from that line, septic, so if you're guys a realtor or a developer, you understand that, so. I think this is about as meaningful as it's gonna get, you know, I don't know, I don't know how much use it get, but my suspicion is, you know, certain pieces get more use than others, I mean, you know, some I mean, even this Whisper Cove that Mike had mentioned earlier, we built 2 homes there for others. And that public access gets used quite a bit. Now, there was some times when it was being used improperly, and the police had to get involved and get the kids from start going there and making it a party and smoking pot and, you know, but these are realities. I mean, those buildings you saw today, that didn't happen by accident. That happened by the public burning, you know, starting fires, painting the building, breaking the windows. So, you know, this whole thing of being, you know, utopic, you know, it takes some structure. It takes some structure where people can use it and respect it, and respect it, all the people that also, you know, will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes too. You know, that's the other issue, is that, you know, the town does benefit from the property taxes on those properties.
I just kind of, do these work like condos or are they sold? I know we're not doing subdivisions like lots, how are they?
Yeah, for simple terms and way of thinking it, it's a, you know, it's PDD, right? So it's common area.
Okay.
They have certain areas around their properties that they have to maintain in a certain way. And the rest is being maintained similar to what would be a condo space. The rest of the spaces, which again is, I mean, you know, my wife likes to remind me of these things, but you know, they never come up in these meetings because everyone, you know, wants to have the utopic and not symbolic, but there's quite a bit of risk and insurance liability involved with doing this as well, you know, so these associations have to maintain, if somebody comes in and gets hurt or what have you, but not necessarily the part that the town's gonna have, but the part the association will have, and that's these 4 owners will have a homeowner association. It'll operate like a condo, so they will have costs available for their own homes to maintain them, you know, surrounding close to their properties, and then the rest of the general property will have to be maintained. Now, as an example, you know, there's wetland maintenance is in the years, okay? It doesn't end that day, you know, the Phragmites is years, 3 years, so it's extensive. I gotta deliver how much impact and cost and effort it takes to create something like this. So we hope it's not symbolic.
So are you in charge of maintaining the pathway and stuff? Is that?
We are in charge of not the towns, you know, the
So the
towns.
town is separate,
The
like.
town has an easement and we haven't finalized we haven't finalized those documents because the town has to get approvals to connect their end.
Right.
That'll be there. My understanding, and again, I'm not aware, I'll let Marjorie speak to this, but the town is on their own on that. Okay. But as part of our proposed development to you guys, we are providing the public walkways. And yes, we have to maintain them and all the surrounding lands around.
Okay.
We probably should more look at what's in the proposals here. I mean, the other walkway in town stuff, I think sounds great, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless, Margaret, if you have any more insight, is that a done deal? Is that still something that's kind of being negotiated, that easement? You know?
Was that a question to me?
Yeah, I just want, like, in terms of like, is that the easement he's describing, like with the town or the path to like the senior, is that just a conversation at this point, or is there something more concrete that we should be thinking about here? Or is that just like an idea at this point?
It is a conversation in which the developer has offered to provide the easement, subject to the town doing all of the things the town has to do to get its approval and authority and implement. But it
Okay.
is a concrete offer. It is not an ephemeral offer. It's an actual
Okay, all
offer.
right.
Yeah.
The discussions have happened with another one of your commissions and the first selectman's office.
Okay. No, I think it could be a great idea, that kind of connects all the way like the main street, and then if you come down here through here, you could walk down the driveway and get to, you know, the town landing there, so it'd be really.
You'd be surprised how many people use it now unauthorized, so I think you're gonna get it, more than you think.
It reminds me of the Bar Harbor. I don't know if anyone's been to Bar Harbor. There's like a walkway that goes all the way around in front of these amazing
Oh, yeah.
homes. But it's like, there's their homes and there's people walking, this is kind of giving people that opportunity.
Not quite a Newport Cliff Walk, but it's,
Not
I
quite.
don't say what
Yeah.
version of it to start of that.
But like the Bar Harbor one, it's like the houses are like right there, it feels
Yeah.
kind of like, cause it's private, they're spending tons of money on these homes, but then you have people that could potentially be walking around. So, it's interesting, it's a
Yeah.
big
I
balance.
mean, a lot of people ask kind of like how it's treated and publicized and sort of respected, because you can declare it public, but if the people who live there, block it off and aren't friendly to people who visit, then that's where we can't control that
You
now.
cannot,
Yeah.
you can't do, listen, there has to be, again, regulations. This goes on the land records, it is public access,
Yeah.
okay? It is, that's why you have zoning and what have you to enforce it, and it has to be done, same way. If the public is abusing it, and they're there, having a party, 10 o'clock at night, disturbing the residents, you're gonna call the police, I mean, it's gonna be, it has to be done. There's obligations on both sides.
Actually, you mentioned just like the deeded here, 'cause, I mean, like I think of the PDD has like a 10% deeded open space. I know a lot of this is already protected wetlands, but I think I saw a set table somewhere that had a number, but do we know what is the percentage of? Is it,
The language relative to
Yeah.
PDD.
It exists. It simply exists by virtue of the scale of the property and the limited amount of construction.
so there's not like parts of the property that are explicitly like set aside as like this is the public open space outside of the path, or is that?
I'll try to answer that if I think I understand this question. As part of a PDD, there are regulations of how much land you have to have,
Yeah,
okay? I don't know that this vehicle says, hey, every house has to be spread out or have to be condensed. But the reality is there can only be so many houses per acre. There has to be a certain amount of acres to even qualify. After you go over a certain amount, you have certain other things that have to be done. But these are all like regulations that, again, we didn't develop them on our own.
that's true. Yeah.
Regulations that we've taken from other towns and what have you, that we negotiated with the town of.
Yeah, no, it's only, I think the regulation says 10% has to be open space, like 65.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it is.
So you've got way more over space here than you have density, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the challenges with this here. Megan or Dennis, did you have any questions?
I would like to use I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
Oh, not at all. No additional questions. I agree with many of the comments, and kind of the conversation so far, and that, one of the big benefits is that public access from a community perspective, and it is, kind of laced with challenges to make it both, appropriate and welcoming relative to the, the private landowners there. But I so far, no additional questions other than the ones that have been raised. Feel free to go ahead, attorney.
Thank you. In one of my other developments that had a robust public access component, and listening to the conversation of the other examples around town, the town may want to create a brochure with public access to include among the brochures that are available at town hall that simply inform people that this is available, and that can generate its own following and make it not a secret. Although the signage keeps it from being a secret, and the amenities. But I also wanted to use Mr. Picard's comments to segue to the Plan of Conservation and Development consistency. And just because I can, I'm putting up the, although it's askew, I'm putting up this page from the submission that we gave, because I think there's a story that is told by the zoning map that shows the Residence A surrounding this one isolated marine industrial parcel, which I don't diminish in its sort of historic significance, but as Mr. Nielsen said, it is challenged in terms of what happens at the water and the burdens of the features of the tidal wetlands and the gateway setback and the special tidal setback. So I think that there is a story of comprehensive plan consistency and POCD consistency that's visual. And then following that begins my discussion of the POCD consistency that I provided for the commission. And in the first paragraph, talk about on page 14 of the POCD are these guiding principles and policies for residential development. And the first is connectivity. And as we talk about the connection from the estuary and the senior housing and the public access up the private driveway to the water, this is an example of the connectivity that is envisioned in the plan of conservation and development. Similarly, opportunity, preparedness, and resilience, vitality, and sustainability. I think that the proposal, the limit of 4 houses on 10 acres, is a reconciliation of conservation and development that promotes the continuing vitality and sustainability of those resources. And together, as I said earlier, with the invasive species remediation, is going to enhance and promote the health of the natural features, which will be useful to them in flood control and all of the other functions and values for habitat and all of the other functions and values that they possess. So I think page 14 of the POCD provides a compelling example of plan consistency. Residential policy number 3 on page 16, identifying and implementing a planned residential development with low-density development is consistent with the neighborhood residential districts while preserving and protecting the natural features of the subject property. Residential policy number 4, as I said, on page 16, and on page 23 and following, the natural resources principles and policies in the POCD from the regulatory setbacks and the fact that not only are we taking out the demolished and decrepit buildings, but doing all of those plantings and stewardship that is going to add value to this parcel and make it a functioning, working parcel, not only because we'll introduce tax ratables and contribute to the grand list, but because we will also be environmental stewards that will make that property valuable from its functional perspective. So that is a distillation of plan consistency. And do you have any other questions? And I would say that all of the commentary that you've heard this evening is equally applicable to both the request to approve the master plan in order to land the planned development district on the marine industrial property and to approve the site plan as proposed, or to endorse or recommend the site plan to the zoning commission. Do you have any other questions?
I mean, in some way, I kind of disagree with your assessment about the implementation of policy 3, because this is talking about like increasing densities. And, we're putting, 4 pretty large, pretty expensive houses in an area of town that, is close to schools, close to Main Street. So it's not really, I think, actually implementing that policy 3, but it's not increasing the density in the area. Yes, there's no houses there now. We are adding some houses that don't exist.
Well,
But there's not really, it's not affordable. We're not, increasing, access for families and, lower income, homeownership opportunities near the center of town.
but the housing crisis in Connecticut is at all scales. It is not, yes, there's an affordable housing crisis, but the housing shortage in Connecticut is at all scales. So in adding 4 houses is adding 4 houses, and some of those will be desirable to empty nesters and people who are downsizing from other situations. So it's all relative, I suppose.
I say, we just did our housing task force study and found that I think the biggest gap is in the one and two person households. And these are not meeting those needs. These are houses for, much larger families that are probably going to be occupied by one and two person households. So it
Well,
ends up, in an area we may be able to put more units and get more families in, we're actually not, we're getting, four really, really nice houses, but I don't want to take anything
Well,
away. Plans are beautiful.
among the challenges that this developer has been the aversion of the town to have density in that location. That is part of why the town in its own did not make it a residential property, because they didn't want to encourage density. That is one of the challenges with which we have had to contend through 5 or 6 years of conversations with the town. And this was the reconciliation, and including the public access component, where we get some economic development and we get a sort of park without making it a park, but it is a public access. So I appreciate what you're saying, and there are, there may have been other kinds of options, but they were not open for this property from the town's perspective.
But Megan, have your hand raised?
Yeah. Sorry, I always feel weird from online jumping in. I'm never sure if someone is talking in the room. So I'm not necessarily convinced either that this is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. I do think that it's a lovely development, and I'm not even disagreeing with the fact that marine industrial may not be the right use for that property. But the only question that is in our purview right now is whether this plan development district is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. That's the only question. And so, as far as I'm concerned, where this property is located could go in two directions in terms of the goals in the plan. We could either be looking at environmental, or we could be looking at housing. From an environmental perspective, the footprints of these units are massive. It between 3,700 and 5,300 square feet. From a sustainability perspective, that's a really high per capita impact, given the number of people that will probably be inhabiting these 5 to 6 bedroom units. From a housing perspective, this much lot coverage should give us more units on the site. Especially, septic, if correct me if I'm wrong, is tied to number of bedrooms. If we have enough septic capacity for 5 to 6 bedroom units, that could be more. I understand that maybe there was a reluctance in the past for the town to allow density on this site, but that's not the question that we're being asked right now. We're being asked to look at the policies in the plan and is it consistent? I'm just not convinced that it is.
But I have to ask, what are you saying is inconsistent? Because from an environmental perspective, we have an we have an approval from the Inland Wetland Agency. We have respected every other environmental setback that exists. So what is the inconsistency, except for the bias about the size of the homes? What is the inconsistency with the plan when it offers all of those environmental benefits by associating this low density development with this parcel?
So all of the opportunity that's being talked about in the policies of the housing section of the plan, the opportunity is talking about variety of housing types, about allowing people to downsize, about starter homes. These homes, yes, I did mention the size of them being large. It's not necessarily the size so much as the fact that these are very expensive, admittedly, from the applicant. So they're not reflecting any of those goals in the plan as far as I see it.
The first sentence under opportunity is Old Saybrook seeks to be a place for residents of all income levels. So I appreciate Public Act 8002. I know what's going on in the state of Connecticut, but when you say all income levels, I don't see that meaning that it has to be something other than all income levels. So that becomes a bar to implementation if you read it as it's written.
I'd say, I mean, our policy too, is, increase affordable housing opportunities as well, in addition to the increased
Understood,
residential.
but it's a piece of private property of limited potential from a building envelope perspective. And, it's not a charity. It's an economic endeavor that seeks to reconcile the appropriate scale of development with the benefits that are being afforded by virtue of the conservation that's going on in it. And I appreciate what you're saying, but in my experience, plans of conservation and development, I mean, let's focus then on the natural resources chapter. Let's say that this is really important in a time of climate change and sea level rise, that we have something here where we're going to take care of the invasives and we're respecting all of those setbacks. There's your consistency. Let's not talk about the housing.
You can't cherry pick policies like that,
Well, but
though.
you can't, I mean, there are, I don't know, 56 pages or however many in the Plan of Conservation and Development. There are myriad numbers of pages that are not resonant to what's before this commission. But
That's
the
fair.
coastal, pardon me?
I said that's fair. However,
The section 22A 93 paren 16 of the Connecticut General Statutes in the Coastal Management Act recognizes public access is a proxy for water dependency. So
Okay.
we have Mr. Nielsen on the record talking about there not being an actual marine use that is feasible, economically feasible, technically feasible, and feasible to implement on this parcel. And in the myriad numbers of commissions that were sitting before, there seems to be a sentiment that, well, we understand this is privately held land, but you know, we're not gonna like move it forward. And whoever called what they saw there today as being not, they used a word that started with D. I don't remember what it was, but it's in disarray. These buildings are in horrible condition. They've been the subject of vandalism and inattention. We're trying to move this parcel into the modern era and make something that is constructive, that provides housing for people who, not for people who need affordable housing, but, and to provide this public access. The town comes and says, we'd like the estuary and the senior center to have access to it. He offers the easement, subject to, I mean, I don't know how else to reconcile what is going on with this parcel with a practical scale of development that is consonant with goals in your POCD. Let's go to chapter 16 and talk about the environment. But I think that from a connectivity perspective, here on page 14, that is very much what is an issue here. We're not saying we're going to wall off this property and put up 4 homes. We're making a sort of a park.
I actually do really appreciate the connectivity and the park. I think that's wonderful. I think that the way that you prioritize what you're looking at in the plan is dependent on the location of the parcel, what it's near, right? If it's near open space or near important natural resources, you prioritize the environmental considerations. If you are near amenities like a train station or a school or a town center, you prioritize housing. In this case, we have both. So I also very much appreciate the balancing act that is happening in this application. I don't have anything further to add.
If I may, just to recap one more time, with regard to the record. I have 4 children. We have 4 children that are, ages 29 to almost 33. So we, like many people, have kids that are trying to start off. We have 1 grandchild, about to have a second. And these kids want to get into places that are affordable. So to be very sensitive to you, and you may or may not know that I'm probably currently now or soon will probably be one of the bigger instruments in bringing affordability to this town. We have units in Hanford Commons, about 30 more that are going in, another 10 recently purchased a 120-acre site in Old Saybrook, which has a large residential component that we plan on being able to offer some affordability in that as well, hopefully. But as you said before, I mean, this is the unfortunate part of this, and it really has to be, you know, it's upsetting, but it has to be stressed. This stuff is complicated and it's a balance, okay? We can all say, you know, we just need more affordable. I agree, all right? But the only vehicle, unfortunately, today that is available to us is in certain applications, in a residential application, if you chose to get an affordability, then the zoning goes away, all right? And therefore you can get bigger density, reduce your cost, and perhaps offer affordability. That is not this piece, okay? And my attorney said it nicely, I'm gonna get it right out there. The town, you guys may, but nobody else, because there was other proposals before us, wants this to be rezoned residential, which would have allowed this to have density that might have done this. But even still, the practicalities, if you really take it in its gross, you have a certain faction of the town that and neighbors and surrounding people that don't feel that this location is the location to have high density, which a higher density might provide an opportunity for affordability. You've got, it was zoned, as we said, by accident, in my opinion, this is my opinion, 45, 50 years ago, and just nothing has happened to it. But it has been pretty much off the tax base of this town for a long time, which is a benefit to all of us. It keeps our basis that we live in this town at 20, you know, as opposed to the 30 or 40, which would make this town even more affordable. So everything's a balancing act. So we're the goal, not just my goal, but the goal, I think, of everyone here. You know, because the people that in the Shellfish Commission would love to be able to have shellfish there, but they have other issues with, you know, with bacterias, and Gateway would like everything to be in its natural state with zero development. Okay, their mission is zero. We've got people here that, you know, are hammering for a more affordable housing in the community, which is me too, is a necessity. I'm not just talking it, I preach it. And I can tell you from an economic standpoint, it is not a value for me, all right? But it's part of the balance, right? If you want to be a developer and you want to do these things, you've got to have the yin and the yang. But there has to be, it has to fit together as well as it can, because of your title setbacks, because of your inland wetland setbacks, because of Gateway, and because of DEP. The footprint of which can be operated on here and get septic that would work, and it is limited. I would disagree with you. The overall square footage of these houses may have maximized the use of the inside, but a 50 by 50 footprint is not big. It's just not, you know, it's bigger than somebody who has a 30 by 50 footprint, but it's not huge by residential standards. But the reality is that economically, and for all the other things that we mentioned here, you're not getting more density in houses. You're not doing it. And this language, even this PD language, which we didn't develop, wouldn't allow it. They don't want it to be residential zoned, because that would allow you to put in affordability and put a lot of units in, and they've said no. So that's what you have. That's what you have. You have a Harbor Commission has different opinions. You have everybody that has a different opinion. You know, we have worked very hard, and I would also believe legally very hard to make sure that this meets all the aspects of your PD from a true legal standpoint. In my opinion, I'm not a lawyer. And we've worked harder, and I've worked harder, and with the team spending this money and all this time frame and the patience to give what we're giving here, which I think, taking a dilapidated property that currently has 4 buildings, one that's a hassle, that is in the ground. Now, you should also know that, you know, things that get dismissed in these things, because they're in my opinion, they're taken as a for instance. A large amount of this property, as Mike has said earlier, is in a flood zone, right? So currently, almost all those buildings are in a flood zone. So FEMA has something to say about this too, because they don't want that. They want properties that are outside of that, so they can ensure that, so affordability can be, insurance can be bought by people going forward. So there's all kinds of instruments that play into this, and I think we've done a damn good job. And obviously biased of trying to coordinate all those things together, so all of this development is outside of, it's no longer in anything that is a special flood hazard area. We're finding a map amendment to any other construction for those homes are outside of that. Again, it's down to a funnel. That area of 10 acres, you know, however you get there, you know, 2/3 of it is open space, right? So, and you're putting, yes, you're putting hopefully 4 beautiful homes on there, hopefully. Hopefully at the end, by the time I get done this, I actually will walk out with my shirt, I may not, right? Because this has been from an economic standpoint, which I know this is not this board's concern, but it's a reality. This property costs a lot of money and soft cost to get there, and to knock those buildings down and deal with the environmental and put the driveways in and put the septic in is a lot of money. And you cannot possibly sell a house for $500,000 when your starting point is way above that just for the underground land. So I hope you can understand that. Sometimes you can't get it all, you know, but we try. We try, and hopefully next time, you know, at Reservoir Avenue, maybe we can enhance, maybe have that conversation further, but thank you.
I mean, I appreciate all the effort that's sort of gone into this and, you know, what the zoning is now, that's zoning commissions, we're looking at, you know, what is this PDD, is the PDD as proposed kind of consistent with our plan of conservation development? I mean, I think there's areas where it falls short, I don't think it, you know, meets the affordable housing, the plan says we want, you know, place for people at all levels, this is residents for people at, you know, one level of income. I don't think it necessarily meets the, you know, densities we've asked for. I love the open space, I love the trail, I love the access there, I love all the environmental improvements. I find it kind of hard to say that, you know, it has no water dependent marine uses, that's why we can't give public access to the water, but yet it's a dock. So there's obviously water dependent uses that you're keeping private for the residents. So I find saying that there's no water dependency it's hard to
There
kind
is
of.
water dependency. The public access is water dependency under the statute. 22A 93 parentheses 16. I think I have it right here. I can read it to you. It is in the definition of water dependency. Just so you're clear on it. I mean, I apologize for interrupting, but it is water dependent with public access. Here's 22A 93. Here's subsection 16. Water dependent uses means, and there's a whole paragraph, and it includes uses which provide general public access to marine or tidal waters. It doesn't mean boating ability. It is a view of the water. It is embodied in statute and in case law. This is water dependency as a matter of law.
I appreciate what you're saying there, but I mean, I think there's pros and cons with sort of the proposal here in terms of, I don't know. That's sort of where I don't know if anybody has any other comments or questions they want to, you know, ask or make here. I mean, I think given the proximity to the schools and Main Street, the kind of you said, Megan, like if we're looking at the big picture of the plan of like what would be the ideal development, I think we as a planning commission would like to have here. Is this what we would want? Maybe not, but is this, you know, given what's there and what's being proposed, is this consistent enough? I think it's one of the decisions we got to make.
It's certainly better than what is there currently. It's also quite beautiful. Yeah.
My concern about density, with the density, is that we already have townhouses around the corner, we have the old Saybrook senior development, we have the school. How much more, and this driveway doesn't even seem like it could handle like a lot of residents.
That's a good
Like,
point, yeah.
It just seems like it's already congested on that street. 4 more houses isn't gonna make a big difference, but like 20 residences, I think, would make it even more congested. As one of the ways of looking at it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Because it's 3 acres of buildable land.
Yeah, the 10. It's
Yeah.
definitely a hard property to do anything with.
Yeah.
Or people thinking, Need more information, we're ready to. Yeah,
I feel like I've taken up enough airspace.
no, yeah. I appreciate what you're saying, guys, and I think it's a hard one to go with.
Yeah.
The residential policy 3 is the one that I look at as like the hardest one that doesn't sort of line up with. It's not increasing the density in this area as like what we would like to see, but.
And I would also suggest that housing for all would incorporate the housing that we already have stock of, which is a lot of larger single family units
Yeah.
already. That is our predominant stock. So if you're thinking the goal of the plan is to provide housing across types, variety, style, income levels, and we already have a lot of a certain category, I think that was the intent.
It's not increasing the diversity of housing options available in town.
But I do appreciate the congestion concern in that area as well.
Yeah.
Especially with the school.
Yeah, I always look at the school as like, this is a good place to live close to the schools. Could be great, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Could be walkable.
It could be definitely walkable
Yeah.
to school.
This is where a future land use map would come in real handy, guys.
I know,
I do love the idea of the connectivity, but that's a town issue, like,
yeah,
it's offered here, but it's like, when are we gonna get on the town to get from the estuary? I think that's a great idea, the whole
Yeah.
concept is really good, but we have to see that happen.
yeah,
From the
you're
other
like a
partners.
whole trail that goes from Main Street through
Yeah,
this, down
Cause
the
you go to the
driveway
leaf dump,
and
what
then.
is that, park of
Oh, yeah.
dump, and then
Right.
founders, whatever, and meander all the way
The
through the
town
town, that
dock
could be
there.
really cool.
Yeah.
And it's kind of started by this whole concept, is kind of
Mhm.
pushing that forward.
I do
Yeah.
love that as well. And I think that's highly consistent to Attorney Shansky's point with our connectivity goals.
Yeah.
And we wanna, have it consistently with that as being like a condition that's
That.
implemented, and yeah.
That the
Or assumption that that sort of, that deal and offer is accepted and negotiated with the town, that's part of our sort of approval here.
yeah,
Cause yeah,
that
it's a lot of natural resources and it does give us, water views and access in this, the trail as it's
But
described.
where is that even being held up right now? Like, where is that sitting, that decision?
Yeah.
with the
I
town,
know.
it sounded like the offer was firm, but but it's
Yeah.
sitting with the town.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I see not.
I think that's what, again, I'm not a lawyer, but.
Yeah, I don't know who has to accept.
But no, again, I don't really know the processes, but I would say to you that, you guys, you're one of the 7 that would recommend or weigh in. Right? So then ultimately, the decisions are made by zoning, and I would assume that part of the conditions of approval would be that we do our part and give you that easement, right? We cannot put the gun to the town's head and say, spend that money.
Oh, right.
But
Yeah.
what would likely be our obligation, which is to provide the easement that we've outlined, would be, I would assume, would be a condition upon approvals, and I can't see why it would not be part of the reason you guys would give your recommendation.
Yeah, that's kind of thing, again, our referral to zoning, like, would we say, it is consistent, but on the condition that this, easement is, sort of accepted and granted and kind of goes through.
Not like from your end, but it's
Yeah,
like,
you-
what's
I
the,
would- you
what's the
can't
town
do that.
doing, like, where are they
I just say it would
connecting?
be consistent
Yeah.
if the developers continue to offer the easement to the town for public access.
I believe, I don't mean to interject, but I believe that this came up in a prior referral. And it's either consistent or not consistent, and then you
Yeah.
can make notes on the
Right.
side to refer to zoning about the
Yeah, we
notes,
can
but
make
it's
it
either,
conditional.
I believe you cannot make it. I'm not a lawyer, but it would be in more of a recommendation versus
Right.
it can be conditioned,
Yeah.
yeah,
They know from like the zone, they're just looking for consistent with or not
yes.
at their meeting, and then that's,
If Chris was here, she'd know exactly where it's sitting right now.
but even then, like
Well-
that, whether that's, in there, it's not really, we need to look at sort of what's, in here in terms of is what's proposed consistent? We
Right,
could send
right.
along with a letter that like, this would be even more consistent, or it may have, would have been consistent if these had been done, but
Yeah.
zoning to kind of know, they need to know, is this sort of as it's proposed in front of
Right,
us
right.
consistent with our plan?
Right.
So that when they go to make their, decisions here on both the PDD and the special exception, that we're, on board and aligned with it, or we're not.
You can add the notes in as well for that, but
Yeah,
it's.
right, but we couldn't say like, it's approved if these things
Yes.
happen.
Oh,
We
yeah.
gotta approve it, and then we can say, we would like to see these things, or these changes in there.
The other thing I will throw out there is I think if we found it inconsistent, the only thing it does is throw zoning into supermajority. It
Yeah.
doesn't actually
No. That's
to
true.
humble us a bit.
Yes, we are one of the advisory committees, yes. I like to think our advice is very important and useful to the zoning commission.
What do you think?
Thank you, you can tell them it's. I don't think we have huge consensus on where we all feel on this.
I think what's a little hard is there's obviously a lot of history with this project,
Yeah.
but this is the first time,
As you-
some of the
it's
newer
everything-
commission members are seeing this,
Everything,
so.
yeah, site walk like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's very different here.
I think I
Yeah,
made similar
yeah.
comments in 2021.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that the comment about, it being some of us newer members, I think, some of the members that are not here are very experienced and really could add some great insight. And so, if there is an opportunity to kind of, put it on pause, and come back to it with the full slate and that experience, I think that might be a real good opportunity here because just going through the whole thing, there's a lot of good points. There's a lot of important details. There's a lot of history with the particular site, and so I think it's important maybe at this point to kind of take a breath, take a pause, and say let's make sure we have all our experience and all our resources available to make the best decision for the commission.
Yeah, I'm looking at the agenda here. I believe the zoning public hearing is that March 16th? Is that what the date? It says we need to review and report to zoning commission for 3/16 public, so that'll be before our next meeting, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be, yeah.
Third one, so that's the 18th.
So yeah, I think the date on here is that's the zoning's public hearing is, unless that's changed since this agenda was published, but.
And we have one, like, going back to, is it one issue that we're questioning?
No, so there's two referrals to us.
No,
from-
not what sorry, the one
Yeah.
issue we have with this plan to move it forward, is it just the affordability and the?
To me, I
Like,
think,
the-
yeah. It's, the housing policies are the ones that I throw out that's just the most, concern where it's, it's not consistent with the affordable housing and some of the density there, but I think your point about that maybe density isn't,
Yeah.
with this particular one way in, one way out, that might not be the thing here.
Well, and I think also to
Yeah.
Dennis's point, like having, other commission members who know some of that history and why those other plans that maybe did offer more density,
I don't. Then this is, I think, the first one that has come all the way, I know at one point there was what, 5 houses in one of them, and then. But I don't know how far that made it through.
There was five when we were trying to, when we were, when we were moving the wetland.
That was
Right, and then-
rejected by the Wetlands Commission.
Right,
Thank you, commission, and, unfortunately, we are, we were. I'm kind of out of time because.
yeah, no, I tried to get some of the.
Just wait.
Yeah, I try to get some of the history from Chris and I just remind myself, some of this even happened before, my time on the board. And a lot of the stuff would be out of the purview of the plan, like whether it's marine industrial or should be residential or what the zoning, map should be. But I know we did the modification MI to allow the PDD, so now we're coming through with a PDD. Which, we're looking at, well, what does that PDD implement? It implements residential housing. So from a POCD, I'm looking at it like, is it consistent with the kind of residential development that we want in town. I mean, that's what's, sort of in here.
Well, I mean, I think the, Marjorie said something earlier, I mean, you gotta look at this in its totality. I mean, there's I think she explained it, but gonna get a lot of legals. There's a great gamut of things that are even in our, maybe in our layman terms, we don't think it is, but by the rules and the regulations, that are in its totality are almost all consistent, right? You guys would also care, maybe we all, I mean, would consider and like and value if there was an affordable element, but unfortunately, it doesn't allow it in this case, right? And so maybe there's one item in this that isn't meeting, but it doesn't make it inconsistent with all the rest of your policies, right?
Well, that's kind of like, what's the balancing here? There's multiple policies where it's consistent with, there's some where maybe it's not, no proposal is going to be consistent with every single policy on here. So it's looking at, what are the guiding principles, what are the policies, kind of where does it all, sort of fit in, and what sort of, what is that big picture development? What are the kinds of things we want to see in town, and where do we want to sort of see them? And is this aligned with that kind of big picture goal of how we want to have this part of town to develop? And, these kind of houses, I think, fit right in with the properties to the east that are closer to the river. They're similar scale of those.
Yeah.
They're a lot bigger than the townhouses in the senior development, those in the cemetery. So it's, it's right in the middle there. I think it could, either one of them from like a, size and shape of housing, it's not like, it's like you're putting in, 4 stories of apartment building. It's completely out of place for the neighborhood of either sort of scale there, whether it's a row of townhouses.
Well,
that go up the strip
certainly, if you look
there.
at Sheffield as a whole, and this has nothing to do with legality, but if you look at the whole thing, I mean, at the very beginning, you've got commercial town hall, right? You've got a school there, you have quite, you have affordable, elderly housing. You've got, at the very end, you have condos, right? You've got, 6, 8, 9 independent houses that probably go from 500 to 700, even houses built in the 40s and 50s, right? You've got condos at the very front of that road. You've got a yacht club at the end. You've got public dock. You got quite a mix of things over there. So I don't know that it's like just catering. There actually is an affordable element on the street already for the over 55. I don't know how many units there, but I think quite a few, right?
Yeah.
And so this road has a mix of economics.
And I think the residential housing, that use for this property, it fits more in than like, an industrial marine, arena probably would on this, part of the street here. I think this use is probably more in line with, the sort of plan for this area.
Also, all the wetlands, and FEMA's just gonna keep moving that line back
Right.
further, and could you imagine having a big development there? And what that insurance
Yeah,
would be,
that's what I mean.
just seems like,
And I really like the, the trails and some of those, connectivity stuff, so.
I had said before that I could see this going either way. Like, I do think that looking at the hierarchy of policies depends on the location of the property, and the location of this particular property could either go towards the environmental goals or go towards the housing goals. And I think if we're leaning towards the environmental goals and even the connectivity goals with the access, I think there can be a stronger case for consistency made.
Yeah. That's kind of where, those outweigh a lot of affordable housing, and there's a lot of benefits to those things as well that are really great for the town, and they open that up, and especially if the connectivity and like the trail comes to be like that, that would be.
when I look at the affordable housing and such, and then the other properties that Mr. Bacard has, and what we saw last time, I know the rentals, but I see the density kind of being in the proper place there versus here in this part.
You're right, this is not right on Main Street, it's not right
And
by the train station,
You
like.
walk to all those things, like all the things we talked about, I feel like we're making more of a city center, and this is like an outlier, and it's near the water, and we are getting some access.
Right, it opens up the water though,
Yeah.
for people who are coming from, other parts of town.
Yeah. Have the kayaking docks down the street and stuff.
And you really got me with the shape of the property and the access in and access out as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
It's
it is a
tricky.
really tough
Yeah,
property to
very
do
tricky.
anything in, so. I think you guys have been very creative of trying to shoehorn something in there.
and it's
So-
really gonna be beautiful, just the planting.
So many
Yeah.
I mean, even with all, like, I looked at the tree report, there's so many trees coming down, but there's still so many left.
All the
Plus, obviously, they
native.
added,
Yeah,
you know, I know I asked the question like when it's gonna look fully grown, it's like, there's a lot of trees that are gonna be left there to begin with.
Yeah.
I guess are we sort of consolidating towards, you know, a motion
I mean,
of like consistency probably with, you know, the connectivity and, you know, the natural resource, you know, environmental protection.
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
Sort of
Yeah.
send along in our, that, yeah,
yeah,
we're
Yeah.
really in favor of, you know, this easement being granted in the town, you know, going
Yeah.
to develop this trail and how that would be a key sort of amplifier, you know, this year.
Yeah.
I know we have to consider both of these things separately as two different kind of motions here, but I also sort of, at least my thought is that it would unlikely that we would approve one and not the other.
Yeah.
But we do have to make a motion and vote on them sort of separately here, so. We wanna make a motion and,
I knew the proper wording of the motion.
I was that Doug is really good at coming up with
Yeah.
those.
He's really good at it.
You're
I
on
know.
Doug, Dennis.
Yeah.
Oh, Doug, because he's not here.
Yeah, not as good as Doug, yeah.
We're going over to where Doug is not sitting tonight.
Yeah.
So it's kind of Dennis's negative general direction too.
Right, yeah. Well, I think, so my memory served, a potential motion could be something that, you know, that we find that this is consistent with the plan of conservation and development in the terms, Michael, that you were mentioning and Megan, you were all mentioning, right? In the use of the natural landscape, the public access, you know, the functional use of a piece of land that's sat dormant for quite a long time. You know, and so those aspects are all, you would just have to get that POCD kind of phrasing and you know, reference kind of those 3 points.
Yeah, so it's like, it's with, yeah, natural resources, you know, policy two of improving and promoting public access points to shoreline and riverfront.
Which page?
Page 31.
Page 31, and you said
Mhm.
natural
It's,
resources.
yeah,
Policy 2.
natural resources policy two,
Policy two.
particularly like clause B,
Policy.
which is improve and promote public access here. And there's also policy 3, protect Old Saybrook's critical natural resources. So a lot of the, you know, the planting and the removal of invasive species, it's, you know, I think fits in line with that. I know from, I think, you know, Marty, you mentioned is the connectivity, you know, goals here in the residential one here, and, you know, I guess residential policy 4 around, you know, environmental impacts and resiliency. It is, you know, we're closely managing new development in a flood prone area of town. And that, this is probably more in the note here, but, you know, if the trail gets granted, then it would definitely be accessing the, you know, the connectivity part of residential and improving connections between neighborhoods in different parts of town, but that's probably, save that one for the.
That's like
The
the
letter.
discussion or on the.
But like, yeah, if this was done, we would encourage this because that would even make this sort of thing more consistent than it normally is here.
So we have policy 2, policy 3, and policy 4,
Of the natural resources, yeah.
natural resources.
I think those are the ones that to me it sort of lines the most into, and then I think, you know, the conversation around the trail would be in the sort of letter that goes along with that, that would also then be supportive of the connectivity and residential.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's also for the health of the residents of
Mhm.
town.
yeah. Yeah, vitality, yeah. All right, so we need to read it out. Back in total here.
I have so far, consistent with POCD for natural resources, policy 2, policy 3, policy 4, and then in the notes, adding the connectivity with the trail.
Yeah.
For the town side of the trails for public access.
So I guess we're looking at, so we'll start with referral A here, which is the plan development district that we're looking for. Yeah, a motion that, you know, the 91 Sheffield application plan development district is consistent with plan of conservation development because it, you know, promotes natural resources policies, 2, 3, and 4.
Yep, I can make that motion if it's
Thank you,
helpful.
Dana. Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? Last night. Ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? Right, motion carries. And now we'll, I think, repeat it for referral B here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess, would anyone want to add or make any changes here? This is for the 91 Sheffield application for the special exception permit. So this would be, you know, the first one was for the approval of the PDD designation. Now it's for what is going to be built on that PDD. This would also be looking for a motion that it is consistent with plan of aspiration development. It was aligned with natural resources policies 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, I could make that same motion.
Second,
Second.
all right. Any discussion on this one? Now we'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? That motion carries.
And to clarify, we're only focusing on the natural resources part.
For consistency, it's the natural resources, and then I think again, the sort of notes to the zoning commission, we want to talk about the, you know, if we can get that, you know, easement in and get the trail down there, that's gonna help promote connectivity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for your time and the good discussion and answering lots of our questions here.
Guys, thank you so very much. I guess we'll see you get through.
I am through.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Really
Good
appreciate it.
night.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda would be the committee and staff reports. Who's Megan?
We're. You may still report.
Maybe.
Do we have any committee reports from, the other ones, anything or anything?
Yeah, no, nothing to report yet this month.
Okay. I know Chris is out there, Julie, the staff report. Do that, okay. Then I think we can probably move on from there, and next agenda item would be the motion for adjournment, so. Make a motion to adjourn. Motion by Aaron.
Second.
It's the easy job. All right, all in favor?
Aye.